different
So
if
it's
you
like kind
were
of more emotional even sometimes?
100%.
And do you think that's considered cheating?
Dang.
Alrighty, guys, welcome to another episode of the True Life Network podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ashabi, and today I got a special treat for you guys. Today's guest is the CEO of a multi-million-dollar curriculum company known as Top Score Writing, Inc. She's also the owner of a 501c3 nonprofit organization, which is a coastal middle and high school. On top of that, she's an educator, author, and entrepreneur, as well as an inspiration to other mothers around the world, building a 7-figure empire while being a mother of 4. Ladies and gentlemen, today I bring to you the one and only Miss Lisa Collum. Lisa, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure, honestly, for real. I mean, at the end of the day, I have a lot of people on the podcast, right? But I haven't had somebody who's actually involved in the school system. And I think that's a big thing for me, at least, because, as we were speaking before the podcast, I'm very big on trying to influence the structure of how the school system's actually operating these days. And at the end of the day, I kind of want to dive into your story and really understand what actually brought you to the point where you wanted to even own your own school and try to have that influence on what's going on in today's generation school systems.
Yeah. So from the moment I was 5 years old, I knew I wanted to be a teacher.
5 years old?
Yes.
What was that about?
I have no idea, but my mom said she would walk in, I'd have my stuffed animals lined up, and I would be teaching all the time. So she got me a chalkboard. So by the time I was 7, 8, 9, 10, I was teaching on a chalkboard all the time. And I just knew, I don't know what it was, but I knew I wanted to be a teacher. So I went into college, got my elementary education. I was super excited at 21 to teach, and I started teaching. And it was at that moment I started to see the need and my specific area that I was in. Yeah. So I was teaching writing, and I saw the reading teacher had 25 books, resources, the math teacher, the science, but writing had nothing. And so that was the moment that I saw there's a lack of resources. And I was talking to other teachers, and they said, we're struggling. Like, we don't have anything for writing. So I had to come up with my own system, my own way of teaching writing. And so I started teaching writing. I was at the lowest performing school in my county. So we were a Title I school, which means like 95% of our students were on free and reduced lunch. Most of them were below grade level or had some sort of disability. But that just fueled my fire even more, because I thought, you know what? Everyone thinks they're not going to do good, so I'm going to prove everyone wrong. And so the first year I taught, they went from 38% proficiency to 95% proficiency. In 1 year. So my principal was like, okay, you're never leaving. And then.
So proficiency meaning that they basically increase their percentile based off of other school systems?
So the state sets what they call like a certain level. So that would be like a 4 at the time as proficiency. So every state's different. But in Florida at the time, 4 was proficient. So that means that they all hit 4 or higher.
Okay.
Out of a scale of 6 at the time. And so at that point, I realized I have something that's working. And so I went on for 2 more years to get 100% of my students to pass. And that's when the state started investigating me.
Okay. So when they started investigating you,
yep.
Well, what did they learn, and what did they realize was the thing that was working with your system?
So because I was at a low performing school, I guess people just didn't expect much out of the students, but I knew they could do it. So when I had 100% of my students pass the state writing exam, the state looked at it as, what is going on? Because their reading and math is still low, but their writing, everyone's passing. We're up here in writing.
Which isn't that kind of weird, because writing and reading go kind of
very
hand
much,
in hand?
Very much so.
So explain that logic right there.
I have a structure. I believe that kids need to be taught a structure with writing. They need to know the parts of each paragraph, and then they can be successful. But what most people do is they just tell them, write a good story, have details. To a kid, that means nothing. But being able to tell them, do this part, add this, that's what kids need in the beginning stages of writing. And so the state investigated. They interviewed kids, interviewed teachers, took my lesson plans, and everything was always cleared. But they just questioned it because it was so, unexpected, and it wasn't normal. Most teachers don't get 100% of their students to pass the state rating exam.
So you're dealing with anywhere from middle to high school children right now, correct?
So, okay, at the time I was teaching, I was in elementary. And so that's where I started top score writing. But my school right now that I own is middle and high school.
Okay. And honestly, throughout the journey going from even, elementary kids to middle and high school kids, what do you think as the biggest thing that you've realized throughout the journey of transitioning that has allowed you to be successful in allowing, these older kids? Because here's the thing, at the end of the day, I think a lot of self-esteem comes from, when you're younger in that, elementary phase. So what do you think is allowing you to be successful with the older kids? What have you realized from working with the younger kids to transitioning to the older kids that's allowing you to be successful with allowing them to help realize and being competent to be able to write to these levels that they are?
Yeah. So it's a few things. The first thing is, I think a lot of things that we do in elementary school seem silly, but they're confidence builders that middle and high school needs. And
Such as?
We take that away. So like, putting up papers that they may do good on, showcasing their work, doing art projects, doing drawing, things that we may think are elementary, but they're still kids when they're 12, 13, 14. And kids want to show off their good work. They want to show off that they did something good. So we try to, at my school, do those things that we would do in elementary that people take away in high school. Our kids do art class. Our kids get to put up their work. We get to go outside and play, things like that, because in the end, they're still kids.
I'm gonna go I'm gonna throw a little controversy in here. All right.
Yes.
All right. So don't take this in any wrong way. I'm just curious in your perspective.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, I'm sure you know who Gary Vee is. He's constantly talking about like the 8th place trophy and like not being able to provide that to the kids and whatnot. You're talking on the other end, going ahead and showcasing, other people's work and whatnot, which is a good thing. Everybody wants to feel validated and like seem like they're doing good, like feel like they're doing a good job. Right. So I'm kind of curious with that perspective, how Gary Vee views everything, not putting everybody almost on a pedestal, even, if they're not fulfilling the work that they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
How does that play a part in your role and, ultimately shift their perspective?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's only one winner all the time. So if we're doing something that's a competition, you either win or you don't win. So there's a difference between showcasing, like for me, a kid that may be, let's say in science at an F and scores a B on a test. To me, that's a huge improvement. It doesn't always have to be an A. And I want to showcase that B. So it may be something, maybe we email the parents, hey, they went from an F to a B, or we put it up on the wall. That to me is different because I think there can be improvement in many different areas. It's not all about straight A's.
100%.
And I'm real big on that. Like, I think that parents are always posting saying, my kid got straight A's or all A's and B's. Well, what about the kids that got A's, B's, and C's? Nothing wrong with that, right? But when it comes to anything that involves a competition or there's a winner, I agree with the fact that there's one winner and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. That's life. So I like to teach real life skills, but I also like to showcase things where kids are showing improvement in areas that other people may not see or even acknowledge.
And I agree with that because at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of people, even if they're progressing, there's not recognition on that.
Yeah.
Right. And for all you guys out there, trust me, I personally know this, not going to go into details, but at the end of the day, I feel like when there's progression and there's not recognition, there's no positive reinforcement.
Yes.
And I think that's a huge component of actually being able to progress because you want to know that like what you're doing is right. Right. And I think that most people, when they don't have that positive reinforcement based off their environment or, who they're surrounded by, et cetera, I think that they kind of feel like, hey, you know what, I'm putting all this effort and then, I'm not getting anything in return. And if you really look at, psychology standards, through history, especially men, okay? Women are the same thing, but it's a little bit more on men, I feel like. And you could correct me if I'm wrong, okay? But men kind of, the way that we work is we're only going to do something if it's going to bring me a return. Women are more like, okay, I'm going to do it because it makes me feel good.
Feel good, right, right.
the return from men is like, yeah, I just want to see a change or a result.
Right.
So from adolescence, kind of like showing that perspective, how do you think that influences, the development of the children that we're working with?
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I think that happens later. That may be more high school for sure. But again, I think it's important to take that time before they're an adult and in the real world, kind of showing them like what you're doing is good. It may not be an A or B, but you're showing improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of kids that I work with, they come with a background. Everyone has a background, right? But a lot of them have a significant background that has an impact on them, whether it be parents are drug addict, low income, um, you know, struggling with the basic needs of food and electricity. And I always say that we have to take that into account in this prime time that we have with them to build that confidence and let them know that they can be successful regardless of these obstacles. And that's like my big thing is before we kind of release them to the real world, I want to prepare them for that.
So I feel like a lot of teachers don't even take that into consideration because they've never been exposed to it, right?
Yes.
And I think that in order to be aware of something, you have to be in that environment where you see those kind of things happening. So I'm kind of curious, and from your side of things, what was the first thing that kind of made you realize, hey, you know what, all these kids are going through different things? Because, I came from, high school. I told, as we were talking about before this podcast, kids were just handed things, right? The teachers knew that, kids were driving. Our student parking lot was packed with a lot more fancier cars than the teachers' parking lot.
Right.
Okay. So like these teachers were just looking at all of us like, all right, these bratty son of a bitches.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm kind of curious, what kind of broke you into that perspective to realize, hey, you know what? All these kids are going through, different things. And I want to be able to show them, hey, I understand what you're going through and I'm here for you.
Yeah. So the whole school thing kind of started because so my brother, who's younger than me, was not a school kid. He was that CD student.
Amen.
Yeah.
A students work for the B students, B students work for the C students, and C students work for me. I'm joking.
Yeah.
But they own the building, D students.
Yeah, he just wasn't that kid to sit all day. And he was failing, skipping, about to drop out. And my mom found this school. And I remember I was teaching and I said, what is it like? And she goes, it's a hole in the wall. She goes, it's nothing, but the kids love it. And the guy who runs it is amazing and they all respect him. And I think it's going to be really good for your brother. So I kind of said, okay, let's see how this goes. Well, 3-4 months in, he's saying, I love it. The mornings he wakes up and he's coughing. He's not saying I'm sick, I want to stay home. He's going to school. He's begging my mom to pay for summer school. And I'm thinking, what is this place? And so I went there. I was 22, 23, and I'd been teaching for a couple of years. And I remember walking in and looking around and seeing a whole bunch of what looked like misfits, and everyone's in pajamas or not dressed like my regular public school that I was used to, but they were all attentive and listening to the guy talking, the teacher. Some had their feet kicked up on the desk. Some were sitting back. Totally not public school, right? Everyone's like this in public school. And so I thought, wow, this is interesting. And I remember watching, and I remember they were having conversations. And I thought, this is so different, but so good, because in the school system, you're used to worksheets and tests, and they were having conversations, which means you truly understand it. You can talk about it. And I remember that moment being like, this is what I want to do. And I walked out that day and I turned around and I said, when you don't want this anymore, call me. And for 10 years, I stayed in contact with him. I met with him frequently. And that's how I ended up taking over the school.
So in your perspective, how did the conversations, kind of, in your perspective, ultimately the conversations were rather than the worksheets and whatnot.
Yes.
How do you think that plays a huge part in somebody actually understanding rather than just, we were talking about this beforehand. I think that ultimately the school systems are trying to condition us to be, obedient, like we talked about, and like part of the system. And you could tell behind what the mural is,
right.
It's about free thinking.
Right.
That's really what it is.
Yep.
So where do you think that the conversations versus the textbook and ultimately spreadsheets and like the quote unquote facts? I don't even believe it's facts. I think the conversation is more facts. That's
right.
my opinion. How do you think that influences a child to actually understand really what's going on?
So my favorite thing to say is that if you can talk about it, even better, teach it to someone else, then you truly understand it. So what I make my own kids do is if they're studying for a test, I make them teach it to me, because if you can teach it, then you get it. This memorization stuff is short term, means nothing. But
You
if
think
you
that comes down
truly
to effective
understand it,
communication?
100%.
So what's effective communication to you?
You have to be able to understand it and talk about it. And be able to go back and forth, not just a speech you memorize, right? Have in-depth conversation, answer questions, go deeper into it. Even with my writing curriculum, that's the reason I keep fighting for keeping writing, because whether you're a great writer or not, you have to be able to take your thoughts and put them on paper, type them. And until you do that, you're just memorizing. And that's unfortunately what happens a lot in our school system.
You know what truth sits in what you're saying right now? There's actually, I forget who says it, but they were saying, okay, if you're speaking to somebody and let's say, for example, you have an opposing view. It's not the Will Smith thing that we were talking about before, the LUV. It's not that.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody watching this, I'm sure they've heard me talk about LUV, so I'm not going to explain it again. But at the end of the day, if you're speaking to somebody, you have a disagreement, to show that you were actually fully listening to somebody, even if you have an opposing view.
Yes.
Let's see if you could take the time to listen to them where you can actually reiterate or repeat almost verbatim what they said to show them that you understand them.
Right.
And I guarantee you 99% of society can't even do that.
Right. And that's the piece we're missing, right? And it's being able to disagree, but understand and listen to each other and then move forward from that and understand that we may not agree, but that's okay.
And I think that comes down to respect.
Yeah, for sure.
So ultimately, how are you influencing the kids within your organization to respect each other? Because it's one thing to effectively communicate. It's another to respect. I think society has a culture of disrespecting.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody wants to, and Gary Vee talks about this. I know we already talked about Gary Vee, but Gary Vee talks about this. I want to build the tallest building, but most people are building the tallest building by tearing everybody else's down. Well, I want to bring everybody else's up.
Yeah.
And I think that just comes from a level of respect and understanding. Hey, you know what? I understand what you're going through. It's that understanding portion.
Right.
But how are you influencing the kids to respect each other when we're in a society from adolescence, we're taught to disrespect each other? And if you look at corporate too, it's all about disrespect and status and showing that I'm above you.
Right, right. So one of the many reasons I keep my school very small is just because of that. I want to be able to have those conversations. I want to be able to intervene on things that are happening and bring that truth to them. Like, it's okay to disagree. It's okay that you don't see her side, but this is life. And so we have a lot of those conversations. The teachers are preaching it. If they come to administration, we're preaching it. And I think that's the important part. School is such an influence, right? We're there 8-9 hours a day, sometimes, more impact than their home life. So if schools are able to do that, I really think we'll be preparing our kids more for what they need to be in the future. And that's a big part of owning a school for me. Like, I didn't need to own a school. I already had a successful business. I did that because I wanted to have that impact.
So I know that you own a school. So are you technically like the principal? So anybody who gets in trouble, they get sent to you?
Technically, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So give me an instance where you actually had people sent to you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, where they had a disagreement and you actually settled it.
Oh gosh, there's so
and
much.
You don't have to name names because I don't want people saying this.
Yeah, there's tons of drama. Teenagers, right? Snapchat, everyone's saying something on social media, and a perfect example. I brought 2 girls in, and they were having a lot of it happens outside of school, but what happens is it comes into school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to control social media, and so in the end, it was of course about a guy. But it was a conversation with them of, listen, this happened. I said, this could happen when you're 20, 30, 40. It's okay. Like, you have to understand, you can't get mad and post something and then act like everything's going to be fine. You guys are actually friends. You're letting this one situation. So it was that conversation. And by the end, they're both like, yeah, you're right. And they both were fine after that. No problems. But I feel like if I didn't have that conversation,
though, in the
mm-hmm.
conversation, because I know it comes down to the conversation with them and kind of like helping them understand, what was the thing that they took away that they understood where they said, yeah, that's right.
That this is going to be a part of life. That's the biggest thing for me. This is going to happen over and over and over again, where you're in situations where you're going to disagree or someone's going to make you mad, and you can't just go full throttle in.
I'm not trying to be like this,
Go for it.
I'm looking for the juicy details, and I know they might see it, and you don't have to name names, I want to know the juicy details. Give me the specifics of what was going on. And I want to understand, like, how did you actually show them, like, hey, this is a part of life? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, okay. So you want details, give you a little bit of details. So somebody liked a boy, the other person was hanging out with the boy, and they were friends before. Right. And so it's like, why would you betray me? You're hanging out with me. You know, I like him. And I was trying to explain to them that, you know, somebody, first of all, you may like someone or be with someone, and although it's not official, right? Someone may just fall in love, or when you're older, it may just happen. And that shouldn't ruin your friendship. You guys should be talking about it. You know, I feel like for them, they need to realize that if she would have just talked to her and explained like, oh, we're just hanging out as friends, it's that communication, right? They would have understood it all.
There. Once again, I'm bringing the controversy, and I'm sorry. I know you're in the middle of a story. Do you think that's real? Like, guys and girls can be friends? Especially at that age.
I think it was more on the girls and girls communicating, because I think if they would have truly been friends, if the other girl would have said something along the lines of, we were hanging out, but he's a little flirty, or he's a little trying to hit on me, as friends, they could have said that to each other.
Yeah, but that's the girl. But do you think guys and girls can actually truly be friends?
That's debatable.
For example, all right, guys, we're taking a turn on this whole podcast right now, all right? So let's say, for example, all right, you got a guy and a girl. They're in their 20s, 30s, whatever it is.
Okay.
You know, they're dating.
Yeah.
One girl, you know, the girl has guy friends, you know, and they just start dating, and then, you know, they're trying to kind of get the insights. The guy's trying to get the insights on what's the relationship, right? They're just my friend. Do you believe that shit?
I don't know about that.
Talk to me. Talk to me. Give me the real facts of life right now.
I think that's a hard one. I you know, what's funny is I think I know a few people personally that have been able to pull that off, but I think it's very hard, because I think there's always a line, and whether it's the guy or the girl, someone always crosses it.
Elaborate.
Come on.
Here's the thing. I'm about to get juicy with you guys, and I'm gonna give you my perspective on it in a second. I want to know yours.
It depends on the person, but I just don't know if it can truly be just a friend relationship.
Why? Get real with the people. Like, I mean, this is like, honestly, like real stuff that people don't understand.
You start talking, you start communicating on levels that you may or may not with your partner. And then you start seeing something else. And then it keeps going from there and there. It'd be different if you were. So it's like kind of more
emotional even sometimes?
100%.
And do you think that's considered cheating?
Dang.
I'm telling you, I could bring out some real hard questions for you right now.
Yeah, I think you're depending on there could be an emotional cheating component. How deep you get. If you're just having conversation, you're at that line. But if you're getting into some deep conversations and really telling stuff that you probably shouldn't have been about your partner, or things you've been going, you know what I mean? Like, there's just a line. I don't know what that line is, okay? But I'm just telling you, there's a line.
You're the teacher. You're the educator. Educate the people right now on this. Because I think, like, especially like through like, this all starts like through like high school.
Of course. Yeah. That's where they get their taste of everything, right? Like they think they're true love. Someone cheated, someone betrayed, drama. And in actuality, that's what happens throughout life, right? In different ways. So in high school, you think it's the end of the world. And what I try to tell them is this is just part of life.
Oh, you're just getting started.
Oh, boy.
No, but for real, I mean, I think this honestly like really has a major part in how society is, you know, today. I think that everybody's comparing to, you know, what's portrayed on social media, which is just comparison. And if you're living life through comparison, you're going to end up being depressed because, oh, why don't I have A, B, and C? Or why does this person get to have that? You know what? You didn't work for it, especially even in relationships. You know, and I think that the foundation of life comes down to relationships, especially the intimate relationships. And I think we learned that through our journey in middle and high school. And you have a huge component of how to shift people's perspective to really go out there and be effective and really be an influence for others and show them what's really fucking possible if you can go ahead and really build your relationships, establish that connection, that trust, and really like be genuine.
Right.
You know, and that's why I brought up this whole topic about like, you know, do you think guys and girls could be friends? You want me to tell you the truth of what I think?
Yeah, I do.
Bull fucking shit. Yo, that dude is just trying to get his dick fucking
Here
wet.
we go.
And I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep it PG for you guys, but I keep it real, and you all know this. You know, at the end of the day, I think that like a guy is the only reason why he's friends with a girl is because, you know, at the end of the day, he's not getting anything else, and he wants to have some kind of engagement with them. And the girl is just there because like she knows, like, hey, she subconsciously knows,
Right.
like he wants it,
Of course.
right? Whether willingly or unwillingly, you're gonna admit it. It's fucking true. But at the end of the day, any fucking woman who just says it's just a friend, fucking look at the conversations. If she don't let you look at the conversation, or he doesn't let you look at the conversation, bitch, run.
That's when you know. It's true. It's the communication level, right? There's a difference between just a yes, no, simple things to deep conversations, for sure. And unfortunately, I think what we lack, especially in our middle school and high schoolers now, is communication, right? Everyone is Snapchat, right? Quick picture, everything's quick. And so we don't get into those conversations, and that's what we're missing, to be honest. I think to realize truly what someone's thinking, or if where your relationship is at, is all based on communication, and we're lacking that major these days with just technology.
Exactly. And I think, you know, Simon Sinek, right?
Mm-hmm.
He talks about this a lot. And I think that I kind of want to get your perspective because you're kind of around it a lot, you know, seeing people from middle school to high school, you know, being with all this technology where it's kind of instant gratification. Even, for example, you want to know something, you just Google it, right?
Right.
It's at the palm of your hands. How do you think that plays a part in the way that we build relationships too? You know, like always having that instant gratification, and then all of a sudden, how do you think it affects the way that we actually build long, meaningful, lasting relationships with each other? Because it's not something that's instant. It's built over time.
That's the problem. We have no patience. And we think when there's bumps in the roads, that it's the end. And that's the part I struggle with most with students, is because I'm trying to teach them that these bumps in the road, I always say that your bumps are your lessons that you learn to be better, right? Every bump just leads you to success, but they take it as it's the end of the world. And I'm trying to teach them that this is just part of life. So I think it's a major problem. I joke that, you know, when I was a teenager and I was logging on to AOL, I'd be like, do for like 15 minutes.
You gotta put that sound bar in this, in this podcast.
And I'd sit there like, la, 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 for 20 minutes. And someone would call my house when it would go off and start over again. I'd just be like, just happy as can be, because I knew I was going to be able to instant message friends. Now, my Google takes more than 10 seconds. And I'm like, T-Mobile, hello. Like, why is your internet not working? Or my house internet goes out, and we have no patience. We like everything quick. And our kids, it's worse, because think of your homework. You don't have to think anymore. Google, get your answer. And so when it comes to relationships or anything, building a business, anything, it takes time, it takes patience, it takes going through the bumps, and they don't know what to do. And they're not able to function. That worries me, because they're thinking that one thing is it, and they give up. I'm like, that you can't do that. That's just part of it, but they're not used to that.
Do you think that's causing major depression?
100%. I think that's the problem.
And I mean, the reason why I'm bringing up the depression portion of it is because I feel like a lot of reason, the main reason why people are depressed in this world is because they don't realize what it takes to actually obtain certain results. Mm-hmm. And anything worth living for means it's going to take time. Exactly. But people don't understand the time thing, because, Snapchat, hold on, right? Not Snapchat, Tinder, ready? Oh, like, I'm hot. People like me. But you're also putting filters on it.
Right.
Here's a real test, what I always tell everybody. Fuck Tinder, fuck Bumble, fuck all the Hinge and whatever dating apps there are. You want to see how much patience you have? Literally go out to a bar. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't suggest anybody finding a wife or a husband at a bar, especially even a club. That's not the real one. If they're there, they're looking for something else. But anyways, try it out. Go to the bar. See how much patience you have to actually even get the other person to, kind of have an engaging conversation with you. Because at first, I guarantee you, unless she's only focused on the external and what you look like, and she's had a few drinks or he had a few drinks, I'm not judging anybody, but that could be an influence. But at the end of the day, let's see how long it actually takes for you guys to connect on a certain level where like, you actually are intrigued by that person.
Right.
And I think that most people are only intrigued because of external shit.
Yeah.
You know what? This person likes that person. This person likes that person. And the only reason why I like them is because everybody else likes them.
Right. Right. I agree with all of that. And I think that just going back to our like teenagers and depression, and I think that it's more than ever. And people say, well, it's because we didn't know back then. Maybe it is more because social media, we know more. But I also think it's because we're all just going to that quickly. Like, it's like, oh, I'm depressed. My boyfriend broke up with me. No, you're not. Like, you're fine. And it's kind of
They're just seeking like validation from other men because they want to feel wanted.
Right.
In my opinion. Or vice versa. It could be from men too.
Right. And I think it's just something that, and that's just one of the things that I really try to do is talk through it and let them know, like, it's okay. Like, breakups are part of it. This is not a real big problem. You will get through this. It's okay. And unfortunately, I don't think at most schools they get to do that. So I really try to take advantage of the fact that we are small. I can talk to the kids and just getting them ready for life.
And also, how do you think the relationships, even after they graduate and whatnot, how do you think the like really intimate relationships that you've been able to establish with each student, how do you think that that's going to affect them in the long term too? Like, just in being able to realize that there's other people and all your actions do affect everybody else around you. Do you think that having that kind of close community of people where everybody knows each other and like you guys can get real with each other, do you think that is influencing them to just ultimately, becoming better human beings so that they can influence others too? Like, talk to me about that kind of relationship and how you think the long lasting effect on them will be.
Yeah. Do you mean like the close knit between the kids at the school?
Correct.
Yeah.
I know that you are like kind of the CEO, but also like principal. Like, so they kind of look at you as authority. But how do you think those relationships where like, you even like take initiative to be more real with them, rather than like a school that has like 400 or 500 kids where, they don't have that kind of relationship.
Right. Well, I will tell you that I'll give you a perfect example. My brother talks to the old principal that I bought the school from more than my mom and dad. Not in a bad way, but just saying that
More than
that's
your
how
mom and
much
dad?
of an impact. Yes. And I think for me, I still am in touch with many of the students that have graduated and or their parents. And I think it's just, for me, that's it. Like, everyone says, why have a school? Like, why start a nonprofit? You already have. And I always say that's my why. Like, there's something about being able to know you impact the students and you have that relationship that continues and you're still impacting them. I mean, I have a kid who graduated 2 years ago who both his parents were drug addict. His aunt was paying for him to come to school. And he went on to mechanic school. He graduated. He's working, doing very well. And I just talked with his aunt, and she's like, we both of them were saying if it was not for your school and you believing in him, it was hard to get him through. But I knew his story, and I took that into account when I saw him every day. And I think it's just important for them to know someone believed in me, and just those little lessons that we went through throughout the school year.
Do you think that ultimately it just helps them, having that kind of relationship, just really understand what care and ingenuity is and being real, and not only ingenuity, just like, I think it's more about that care factor. I think that people don't really understand even what care is. And I'm willing to, does anybody have a definition of what actually care means? Because I think that what we do when it comes down to effective communication, you being a writer, you should know this too. Most people, and I'm going to look up the definition real quick for a second, because most people, they don't actually know what words really mean. Hold on. I know you got it, but I got it right here. And I call this word clearing. Okay. You could take a general word of what you think you know the meaning of, go look it up. And I guarantee you the definition is going to give you a completely different meaning.
Yeah.
That's why we can't effectively communicate with each other, because we don't know what the fuck we're actually saying.
Yeah.
The definition of care is the provision of what is necessary for the health, welfare, maintenance, and protection of someone or something. Serious attention or consideration applied to doing something correctly or to avoid damage or risk. Feel concern or interest. Attach importance to. something. Last one is look after and provide for the need of.
Hmm.
So simple word like that, people think caring means just like, yeah, I care about how you feel. Okay, do you know what you're actually saying when you say you care
Right.
about how I feel? Are you actually looking out for to minimize the risk of the damage of what you're doing to me emotionally?
Right. Right.
And I think that, once again, effective communication, and we haven't talked about this, effective communication really comes down to emotional intelligence, and that's what we have to be instilling in our youth.
For sure. I mean, and people throw around the word care or, I'm thinking of you or I want to help you, but are you really? Like, what are you doing? It's one thing to say it, but it's doing it. And I try to really,
Actions speak louder than words, baby.
yeah, for sure. And I think it's not just one conversation, it's follow up. Especially with kids, it's okay. We had this conversation a couple of days later. How's it going? Did you guys resolve it? Have you guys talked? And just making sure that they get through it. And half the time, not half the time, more than half the time, they're like, yeah, that was nothing. They're back to normal. Kids are resilient, right? They forget about it, move on, which is great. But I also want them to remember that as they go into adulthood.
You know what I think is important that you just said right there? The follow-up portion. It's easy to, most people will just be like, yeah, I'm good.
Mhm.
Right? Check in on them in a few days because it shows that you actually really do care about their well-being.
Right.
Like most people will just forget about it because they have their own stuff going on and nobody's checking in on them. But if you could take a stand and go ahead and say, you know what, a week later, I really want to just check in on you and make sure you're good. I think that really just knowing at least one person will do that for you.
That's it.
Goes
One
a
person.
long way.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if it's a friend, family member, or even, a spouse and whatnot.
Right.
I think that's a huge component of what
100%.
really allows people to realize like that they mean something.
That's it. Our world is hard now. It's very hard. And our kids are growing up in...
Hold up. You don't think that society's softening?
Oh, no. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the world
okay.
itself, especially with social media, is hard for kids.
Mm.
I 100% think society is softening.
We're all weak.
We are. It's a bunch of weak people. I keep saying I am trying to make everyone a little bit harder because that bothers me. But I think it's harder to grow up in our world because of social media and internet and things like that. And I give the example of the kid who may have fell in lunch and dropped all his food, went home that day and may have told his parents and went to school the next day and no one mentioned it because no one remembered it. Now it's on video. Everyone's on Snapchat. When you go home, everyone's talking about it. The next day, everyone's talking about it. And for 3-4 days, you have to deal with whatever that is.
All right. Luckily, I wasn't in that time period where people were actually posting. I mean, I was in high school probably maybe like 10 years ago. I graduated in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Was never in that time period where people are posting it. I don't know. You see it more nowadays. I know that there was talk going around because of social media of what's going on, but I think that's actually a huge component too of why it's a little bit harder for especially at that age. Like you're still developing. You don't know what's going on. And, when everybody's attacking you, I think that's another thing. Like people have to really understand that because it can cause things like suicide.
Right.
Like bullying, it's not cool. Who said it wasn't cool to try and show people that you care?
Right. And so that's just it. It's nothing ever leaves. Once it's happened, it follows you for a very long time. And it's hard to get past. And then we have, think about social media. You're looking at all the beautiful women or men and you're comparing like you talked about earlier. And it's hard to get past that as a teenager. And so I just think it's important that we help our kids get through this kind of new world in a sense, because there's a lot thrown at them. They have a lot. They're growing up faster. There's a lot in front of their face. There's a lot of things they have to see they probably would have never seen before social media. And so the communication and that one, going back to what you said, that one person that can show that they care or follow up will make all the difference in the world. I promise you. It's just all it takes one person. It does not need to be everybody, 10 people, just one person will make the difference.
I know we're on a time frame
Yes.
because I know that you have other obligations. You're a busy person. At the end of the day, I do have one last question.
Yes.
And I know we're going to do part 2, so I'm going to go even deeper on part 2 with this specific question.
Yes.
With kids in middle and high school, how do you think music plays a role in their lives?
You know, I think music is a big part of everyone's life for a couple reasons. I think the access to it is easy. Now it's no longer you have to go home, play your cassette tape, right? You can have it on your phone, your AirPods. I'm real big on if you're doing your work and you want to listen to music, I'm fine with that. I think music plays a role in some kids doing better, kind of zoning out, or not zoning out, but zoning out to what's going on and zoning in on what they're doing. If you're doing an assignment, maybe the music will help. I think a lot of kids are relating to what the lyrics are saying. So I think music's a huge part. However, I think on the other end of things too, some kids are taking music to the extreme and kind of falling into what they think they should be based on the lyrics. And I'm like, hold up, like you are not that gangster, calm down, but they're getting all hyped up over this. And so I think it's just, it's kind of both sides of it. But either way, I think we need to take a look into that because it's such a big part of kids' lives now, more than ever. Because, back in the day, I had a cassette tape or, find a bootleg somewhere. And now it's just Apple Music. I got it at my fingertips. So I do think it's much bigger than we ever have had to deal with before, but there's just two sides of it for sure.
100%. I think, at the end of the day, Eminem explained it perfectly in the song Sing for the Moment. He's like, these kids think that everything I'm saying is real and that they basically put me on a pedestal. I forget what the exact words were. And it's like, yeah, but, the artists, what they're doing is one, either playing the game, talking about sex, money, drugs, like all that kind of stuff, just to kind of sell an image of what society wants to hear, right? That's number one. Number two is some other individuals in the game will actually talk about their life experiences and people can go ahead and relate to it, just like you were saying. But like at the end of the day, realize that you can relate to it and see where, like, look at that person as, a role model or realize, okay, that's what I went through. Now look where I'm at because of what I went through. And I think some people just get captured in what they're speaking and thinking that they're still living that kind of life.
Right.
If most rappers, I'm going to be real with everybody. Most rappers were out there fucking living the life they're talking about.
Yeah.
All of them would be in jail. Period. They'd be a fucking criminal. And, at the end of the day, Eminem talks about that in that song too. He says in Sing the Moment, if my music is literal, then I'm a criminal. How the fuck could I raise a little girl? I couldn't. I wouldn't be fit to. You're full of shit too, Guerrera. That was a fist that hit you. See, he's even talking like the words are just to fucking prove a point. Like, hey, this shit ain't real. I'm just fucking selling. And he talks about this in another song. All I'm trying to do is sell pictures of the devil. Hold on. I'm trying to develop pictures of the devil so I could sell them. Most kids don't even realize that because they're so young and they just think it's cool.
They just think it's cool. Right. They're just singing the words, not really thinking about it. For sure.
So, but look, I know that you're on a time frame. Once again, I do appreciate you coming out. We're definitely doing part 2. And I promise you we're going to go a lot more in depth.
Yes.
Because I know that there's a lot of things that we could even do together to influence the youth and the adolescents to go ahead and develop into the people that are actually going to change the world and whatnot. So I'm definitely looking forward to continuing this relationship and the podcast. But if anybody wants to find out, more information on your services and also maybe even potentially being a student at your school, like some parents are watching this, where can they go to find out more information?
So the easiest place is on Instagram, and my handle is Lisa Collum, which is COLLUM CEO. So Lisa Collum CEO, or my website, which is just lisacollum.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here. Make sure you go give her a follow, go check her out, and she'll definitely be back. So stay tuned. I appreciate you coming.
Yes, thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. What's going on, guys? If you guys like that episode of the True Life Network podcast, make sure you like, subscribe, and make sure to go ahead and turn on those notifications so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes.